Irene Gakwa always called. Even after moving from Kenya to the United States, she spoke to her parents regularly on WhatsApp. But in late February 2022, something changed. The video calls stopped, and her texts, they didn't sound like Irene. Irene's brothers started digging, and what they found made their hearts stop. This is her story.
Hi, I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Amy.
And you're listening to She Goes by Jane. At the end of this episode and every episode, we will be joined by a special guest who will read an original poem by Amy Baker about the women we're featuring. This week, we are joined by Kim Roberts.
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Amy.
Vanessa, how have you been this week?
I've been pretty good. How have you been?
Good. Just trying to fit in everything that I need to fit in.
Yeah.
There's just a lot going on all the time.
There is a lot. And you've been busy.
I have been busy. I've been working on Girl Hunt, my newsletter, which is about true crime, stuff that we can't fit in here.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been working on a long series about mugshots.
Mugshots. Tell me more about this.
Okay, well, I love a good research rabbit hole, right?
Okay.
And first I started off with this mugshot of this young woman named Ruby Fox, and she'd been picked up for shoplifting of a dress.
Okay.
And then that turned into like a whole, what are all the stories behind these historic mugshots that you see online?
Okay, so they're all historical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like old-timey mugshots?
Old-timey
just
mugshots.
Women?
Yes. Well, I mean, there are many people who are represented in historic mugshots, but
No, the ones you're working on.
the ones that I am working on.
The ones you've selected are women.
The ones I have selected are women. So it's like a look at sex work historically in not Oklahoma, Nebraska. Okay. I know my states.
Do you?
I don't. Nebraska.
I don't.
And then I was just kind of telling you before we started recording about a murder situation where a woman murders her lover, then cuddles with his dead body.
Not on accident.
Not on accident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we had that conversation. I'm like, so did she know he was dead when she was cuddling him? And Amy's like, yes, because she killed him.
She's the one who killed him. So, yeah. And then...
And it wasn't just a cuddle.
It was a prolonged 2-hour cuddle.
That's a long cuddle.
That was a lot of cuddle with the body. Yeah. That's not the story I expected from, if you just look at someone's mugshot, and, obviously I knew based on the small amount of text that, she had been convicted of murder, but I just didn't know, the story. So part of this is just, figuring out what is the story behind these images. And,
right.
So I've been reading about the trial, and this all goes into, Girl Hunt, and it's fascinating. There's some, victim blaming of the doctor, the guy. It's just... Yeah, the lover is her doctor.
The one she kills?
The one she killed and then cuddled.
So we blame him for this incident?
They did in court. It's very fascinating. So normally I write a lot about women who are victims of crimes.
Yes.
But Girl Hunt is a place to talk about the intersection of true crime and women, and sometimes that's them as perpetrators.
That's probably an interesting take for a change, right? Instead of always just being this happened to this woman, this happened to this woman, this happened. Now we're okay, so the woman did this thing.
Yeah. And it's just how do I end up feeling about that situation, right?
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to subscribe, it's Girl Hunt, and you can find me on Substack.
And that's one word, right?
Girl Hunt, all one word, yeah.
Yep.
Because it's a take on manhunt.
So I've known about the newsletter for a while, and I did not put that together.
It's actually inspired by one of our episodes, because all of the, when one of the women that we talked about went missing, a lot of the newspaper articles, this was in the 1930s at the time, had these big headlines that read Girl Hunt. And I was like, oh,
I like it.
Yeah, because I feel like that's what I'm doing, hunting for women through history. So, yeah.
Now I'm going to be there's Amy, Girl Hunter.
Yes. Girl hunter.
Historical girl hunter.
I just also feel like probably if you came across that in a different context, you would think that the newsletter was about something very different. So just to be clear, yes, it is
I hadn't thought about that either.
Take on manhunt, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
should we get into today's episode?
Sure.
Okay. This one is heartbreaking. Yeah.
They all are.
Yeah, I think, looking at, particularly just like looking at their images as I'm writing about them, like, this one involves like such a long distance between the missing person and her parents, like physically.
Okay.
I just think about like how would you even cope if like not only your kid went missing, but like on the other side of the world, like how would you manage that? So let's get into her story.
So I don't usually know much about anything that you're telling me.
Did I tell you too much?
No, this one I don't know anything about. Usually I know a little bit because I can like gather clues from what you put out on like your Instagram or your Facebook or just what you've said to me throughout the week. This week I have zero inkling about what we're about to talk about.
Right.
Not even a bit.
Yeah. So
I am curious. So can you...
Let's start.
Okay.
Yeah. So when 32-year-old Irene Gakwa got on WhatsApp to video chat with her father, Felix, she looked tired and her short hair, which she usually wore in braids, was rumpled. Irene, she lived in the United States, but she spoke to her parents who lived in a suburb of Nairobi, Kenya, nearly every day. She primarily used video chat, liking the immediacy and the ability to see her parents' faces, right?
So this means it's a pretty current story?
Yeah, so this is one of the most current cases that we've talked about.
Ever?
Yeah, I think.
Okay. These are always like, you know how much I like the ones from like 1900.
Because it gives you some distance.
I need some time.
Right?
Yeah. So now we're talking about video chatting and I'm like, yeah, that's okay.
So for her father, Felix, it's comforting to see his daughter regularly on video chat. Even though Irene's two older brothers and their families lived in the U.S., Irene was his baby and his only daughter. So when he spoke to her that day, he grew concerned when she didn't seem as vibrant and engaged as usual. Make sure you get some hot milk and relax, he instructed his daughter. The two signed off, and Felix breathed a sigh of relief that he'd be able to see her at the end of the year for the Christmas holiday. Though it wouldn't be for another 10 months, he looked forward to having his daughter back in Kenya for a visit. Not long after, her father tried to connect with her again via WhatsApp for their regular call, but the video chat went unanswered. Dad, I dropped my phone in the water and now the microphone won't work, Irene wrote back. This message gave Felix pause. When Irene texted, it was always in a mix of Swahili and Kenyan slang, so this more formal English message didn't match up with her usual texting style.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like you really grow accustomed to how someone communicates.
Yeah. No, I could see that that would be like a total red flag right there, right?
After that, though, more attempts to connect to her went unanswered. And when Irene did write, it was messages like, I just want you to know I love and miss you and Mom. So sounding like kind of not her usual communication style is what I'm getting from this. As days passed without seeing her face on the screen, Felix's concern grew. Finally, Irene's older brothers were asked to look into what was going on with Irene. Kennedy and Chris, Irene's brothers, lived in Meridian, Idaho, a suburb of Boise. Irene had lived with Chris and his wife when she moved to the U.S. 3 years before. A few months ago, though, she'd moved to Phoenix, Arizona. When Chris texted her to say he hadn't heard from her in weeks and wanted to know how she was, her text back was also in English, and she explained that she was thinking about getting her own cell phone plan. Now, to Chris, this made no sense, because why would you pay more for your own cell plan? Because they were on a family plan together. And why didn't it sound like his sister in the messages? So he follows up on his concern. He sends police to check on his sister at the address she had given him for her new Phoenix residence. But when police showed up, it was clear that she did not live there.
So even the brother was like, this isn't her texting me.
Yeah, so like both her and her dad were just like, this is not feeling right.
Okay.
So,
and then she wasn't at the apartment?
No, so she doesn't live there at all.
Had she ever? Was there any?
It's very clear that that was not the case.
Okay.
Yeah. So this has been going on for months. Like, she's been living in Phoenix for months, or so they thought, right? So how could it be possible that the address they had been given just didn't check out, right? So to figure out what was going on, the brothers used an unusual tool. The cell phone plan, again, is the siblings and Irene are on the same family plan. So this enabled them to poke around her phone records. And this is something that they wouldn't normally do, but they were too concerned about her at this point and all this unexplained behavior.
Well, at this point, and nobody's actually seen her talk to her.
Right.
So I think she'd forgive this.
Right. So it's like, what's going on? Now, looking at her call logs, the two found one that she seemed to call regularly, and they reasoned that that number likely belonged to someone she knew pretty well. And the call they're about to make is going to change everything for them.
Okay. So you can tell us?
I am, but first I'm going to tell you about Irene and how we even got into this story to begin with, right? Now, Irene Gakwa, she was born in Kenya. She's the youngest of the three children. Her brother Chris said she was always a daddy's girl and would always be a tattletale when he stepped out of line when they were kids.
So what are the ages of... So she's 32 at the time of this story?
Yeah, so she's quite a bit younger, and I don't have birth dates for everyone, but I believe Kennedy, the oldest, is about 11 to 12 years older. Right, so a significant age gap.
Oh, so she is the baby.
She's the baby, because Chris is about 6 years older. So there's like some big gaps between the kids, right? So, you know, she's also in this prime slot to be kind of the indulged youngest sibling, like destined to annoy Chris when they were kids. And I say that from experience as the youngest sibling.
Were you the youngest and most annoying sibling?
I mean, I like to think I was probably not the most annoying, but but yeah, particularly when you have significant age gaps. So there's like a substantial age gap between me and my oldest brother and a smaller but significant age gap between me and the next brother. So yeah.
There's 10 years between my sister and I. So I know what it's like to be the annoying little sister, but I also know what it's like to have the annoying momming big sister.
Right.
And I would be like, you're not mom.
You're not mom. So like these are big age gaps, right? So during the time she's growing up, this age difference between her and her brothers means that like her brothers are out, they're making their way in the world while she's still attending school. So the two brothers moved to the US so they could be involved in the medical field. Her brother Kennedy said, we
would need to do the elementary school thing. Yeah.
So after elementary school, though, Irene, she goes to boarding school at the Karate Girls School about 2 hours away. And then when she graduated, she went to college in Kenya as well. Now, during this time that she's growing up, the age difference between her and her brothers meant that they were already making their way in the world and she was still attending school, right? Now, the two brothers, they moved to the US so that they can be involved in the medical field. Her brother Kennedy said that they talked on the phone often, but would only be able to see each other about every 2 years or so. So when they made the trip back home to Kenya, he discovered she had an opinion. And he said, we always talk to her on the phone, but it's different when you see someone in person. You see what they like, what they don't.
So he's finally seeing her as like a person, not just that little sister.
Not the little sister. Like, oh, it's like...
She's an adult.
This is who she is, yeah. And he said that's why one of his most meaningful experiences with Irene was when he was back in Kenya and the family took a vacation together to the coast. He said, like, honestly, nothing extraordinary happened on this trip, but what he appreciated most was just getting to know Irene as an adult. They just enjoyed each other's company. They eat meals together. They relax. They just generally got to know one another. After that, Irene told her father that she was also interested in going to the United States, and her father was hesitant to give his blessing to this idea, though. Not only was Irene his baby, but he just wasn't certain how she would enjoy being away from home. Irene was kind of a homebody. She spent most of her time in Nairobi, close to home. In fact, she often barely left her room. We sometimes had to remind her to get out of the house and get some sunlight, her father said. I feel like this would be my kid, too. I very often have to be like, there's stuff outside.
Go outside.
Yes. Now, finally, he realized this might be the best thing for Irene. She could connect with her brothers in the United States. She could also pursue her dreams of becoming a nurse in a hospital setting, so they agree, right? So in 2019, she moved in with her brother Chris, his wife Gayusi, and their children in Meridian, Idaho. And she got a job as a health aide and started looking at college opportunities, so everything was going according to plan.
Also, it's probably really making her parents happy that she's living with her brother when she first moves there.
Yeah, so she's not alone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, Irene grew quite close to her sister-in-law, and the two took a trip to Los Angeles in 2020. They spent their time eating out, visiting the beach, and shopping. And it was on this trip that Irene made a confession. She was secretly dating a man that she met on Craigslist, and we're going to call him N.
Oh, no. So as soon as you said Craigslist, is that bad of me?
No, I mean,
So,
that
like,
was
maybe-
my initial
Maybe not Craigslist.
thought. Like, honestly, like, I'm having a hard time understanding that people would in a contemporary era be using Craigslist.
So aren't there so many dating apps that maybe have more information?
There are, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know Craigslist dating was still a thing.
Right.
Like, back in my day, like early 2000s.
Earl.
Yeah.
Early.
Early 2000s. Like, there were, like, I loved reading, like, missed connections because I'd always just be like, I hope these two find each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, this wasn't.
And now, okay.
But now, yeah,
And
there
now,
are
yeah.
dating apps for this, right? So Irene has been dating this guy, and she doesn't really tell her sister-in-law too much about the relationship, but she is on the phone with him quite frequently on this trip, so it's clear that this is, like,
A thing.
a thing. Now, eventually, when they get back to Idaho, her family does meet him.
Oh, so he's, okay.
He's local to Idaho,
Okay.
but she confesses this relationship on this trip with her sister-in-law. Probably because she's, like, become close to her and can, like, share this kind of test out the waters,
Yeah.
I think, right?
I just wasn't aware. Like, I don't know. I guess I was like, oh, yeah, the family probably never met him.
Oh, yeah. So they do.
They do. Okay.
Yeah. So this is not like a long distance Craigslist love connection.
Okay.
Now, her brother Kennedy said that his impression of N was that he was really quiet and didn't say much. And even told Kennedy that he didn't have a lot of friends. Like, red flag. Overall, though, it seemed like the brothers didn't really like him much, though. As the two became more serious, Irene brought N to a few more family gatherings and dinners, and their impression of him just worsened over time. Instead of reading him as shy, they seemed to say that he felt distant, and they noticed that he seemed to be controlling of their sister. Kennedy just blatantly said, I didn't have a good feeling about him. But the brothers were also just trying to respect that their sister was an adult, so they just backed off. And at some point, Irene moved in with N, and she started attending nursing school at the College of Western Idaho. Now, the last time she stopped at their house was on Thanksgiving, and they celebrated by eating meals that reminded them of home, including barbecued goat, jollof rice, and ugali. And Irene was in charge of bringing a cabbage and tomato dish, the kind that they remembered their mother making when they were children. So it's like this family celebration.
Mm-hmm.
And after the celebration, Irene showed her sister-in-law how to make the dish. So it seemed like everyone was on good terms with one
Like
another.
a nice night.
Yeah. But after that, Irene grew more distant, and her brothers blamed N for it, not liking the influence that he had on their sister. And despite the fact that Irene seemed to be living with N, Kennedy and Chris and Gayusi described Irene's relationship as on again, off again with him. And so when they learned that Irene was moving to Arizona in the summer of 2021, they had to have been happy that she was getting away from N and pursuing her degree, even if that meant she'd be further away. Besides, Irene hated winter, so it didn't surprise them that she would pick a warmer area to live in. And that brings us to February 24th, 2022. Irene and her father Felix have their regular WhatsApp conversation where, to him, she seems possibly bored and hungry rather than her usual self. And when her family doesn't hear from her, Kennedy and Chris, again, they have the police in Phoenix do a welfare check. And when they learn that she doesn't live at the address she gave him, they dive into her phone records, pulling out that number she seems to call regularly. And when they call that number, they're shocked by what they hear. The number belongs to one of Irene's friends, not in the Boise area where she'd made her life for the last few years, not in Arizona where she said she was living, but in a small town of Gillette, Wyoming. It's probably unlikely that the brothers had ever heard of Gillette before that point, but it's a small town in northeastern part of Wyoming, nearly 800 miles away from their home in Idaho.
And they have winters there.
Yeah.
So it's not at all what they were thinking.
No.
Huh.
And like, what? Why? What's going on, right? Now, the friend tells the brothers that Irene was living in Gillette and going to school at the community college there. And this seemed really strange. Gillette is known for its coal country. It's a mining town that can really feel like it's in the middle of nowhere. So they're like, what the heck, right?
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, the brothers learn she's not there alone. She is, in fact, living with N, who has bought a house in Gillette. And the couple has moved there and has been living there for months without Irene's family knowing.
It seems like from what you laid down at the beginning of Irene's story that this is not in her character.
Yeah, so this feels and seems very out of character for her. And what the family comes to believe in the days ahead is that N was kind of the driving force behind moving them so far away and to such a remote area.
Mm-hmm.
They'll come to see this as just yet another way of N isolating Irene from those who really care about her, right?
Which is something we see again and again.
Yeah. And like, it's just no other option really fits. Like Irene, again, as you said, hates the cold.
And now this is cold.
Very cold.
Yeah.
And the community college nursing program would have been a huge step down as well. Like, why would you move from like a 4-year university nursing program to a 2-year community college? In addition, she's like working at a few part-time jobs in Gillette, and it's nothing that you would have been like the kind of job that you would move for. And meanwhile, he works remotely. So that's something that you could do from anywhere. Right. We'll be back in a moment. For now, though, they're just learning that what they thought about their sister's life wasn't fact at all. And frighteningly, no one else, including those in Gillette, has heard from Irene either. Now, by the time the brothers become aware of this, critical days have passed since her last video call with her father. The brothers drive to Gillette to make a missing persons report in person on March 20th. Nearly a month has passed at this point. Now, the first real news piece about this hits the local papers weeks later on April 16th, and it's mentioned that the man she's living with, who we now know is N, was considered a person of interest in her disappearance, but he's not cooperating with the investigative efforts. In this initial report, police also revealed that they're following a tip that Irene may have been taken to a mine site, an oil field, or some other rural location in a car or a crossover car between the dates of February 24th and March 20th, the time that she was reported missing. With nearly a month gap and such a wide and rural search area, the reality of being able to find Irene in those conditions became apparent to everyone from her family to local Gillette residents who could never have predicted that someone would go missing from this small community, right?
Now, did the police look into N at all?
Yeah, so the initial investigation, suspicion automatically falls on N because it becomes apparent he was likely the last person to see her, right? And also we've got this pattern of behavior, this isolating situation. Now, during early questioning, N did actually speak to police initially. He says that Irene had come home from having dinner out, and when she got home, she told him she was leaving him and moving to Texas.
Okay.
He said he was there while she packed up her belongings into 2 black garbage bags, and then she left the house, got into a dark-colored SUV, and it pulled away with someone else.
Such a typical kind of excuse, right?
Right.
It seems like...
Oh, she said she was leaving and going to this completely different state.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. After doing so many episodes with you where it falls into this realm of domestic violence. It's just there's totally a pattern.
Right. And it's just like, I feel like we've done this story before.
Right.
Yeah. Now, thankfully, police are suspicious of his story.
Because they've heard it before, too.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Now, in their hunt for Irene, they'd executed 24 search warrants. Many of those warrants weren't for physical locations, but to access information about Irene's finances and online accounts. What they discovered was chilling, to say the least. Beginning on February 25th, so remember the day after she talks to her dad. Okay. And going through March, there's a series of 8 separate transactions transferring money from Irene's checking account to one of N's electronic accounts. 2 of those transactions totaled $1,000. The remaining 6 transactions transferred a total of $2,666.46. In addition, there was a password change to her account on February 25th. Now, these aren't the only strange financial dealings coming from Irene's accounts. After February 24th, again, the time she was last seen on video chat with her dad, there were 16 credit card transactions which totaled $604.65. And a search warrant for her Capital One account revealed 40 more credit card charges. 13 of those happened between February 25th and 28th for $804.60, and more charges happened between March 1st and March 19th. Those totaled $2,426.
Did they say what if they knew what they were on?
Yeah, so there are some weird purchases here. Now, first, investigators say these transactions actually show a marked increase in use from Irene's accounts based on her previous history. Like, she was not making like this many transactions, right? Meaning these don't match her spending habits. And many of those transactions happened from an IP address linked to N's home. So that wouldn't have been unusual under normal circumstances since Irene lived there. But considering he claimed she'd moved to Texas.
Right. Like, why is she doing that?
Yeah, so it's more suspicious. And to add to the concern, Irene's WhatsApp account had been deleted early in March, and as well, her email address. Now, when questioned, N didn't necessarily deny these actions. Even though he didn't have authorization to touch those accounts, he said that he did it to convince Irene to get in touch with him. He claimed that he thought it would compel her to call him.
Okay.
Yeah, that she would see this activity on her account
and
why get in touch, right? Now, these financial crimes were enough to get N arrested. And at 3:30 p.m. on March 10th, he's arrested and charged with 2 felony counts of theft, 1 felony count of unlawful use of a credit card, and 2 felony counts of crimes against intellectual property. Irene was considered the victim of those crimes. Now, when he appeared before the judge, the prosecutors asked that bail be set at $250,000, arguing that given his lack of ties to the community, he represented a flight risk. And the defense argued that it should be $5,000, saying that their client had not been charged with a violent crime, saying specifically they could have easily charged him with a crime in the last 2 or 3 months, and they haven't. Essentially, law enforcement, I don't think, has the probable cause to charge N with a crime related to anything dealing with the disappearance of Miss Gakwa. Now, the judge decides to set bail at $10,000, which is far closer to what the defense was asking than what the prosecutors were asking. But Irene's family, they're not buying the defense's line. For them, these financial crimes meant something more. Kennedy said he deactivated her email account. Why would you do that? Why would you take somebody's money from a checking account? Why would you max somebody's credit card? He obviously knows more than he's saying.
Right.
Now, if the prosecution was worried that N would head out of town once he made bail, they needn't have worried. According to everyone in town, once he made bail, he's just like barely leaving his house. He orders his food and groceries to be delivered rather than heading out into public, into local stores or restaurants. So he's like holed up in his home. Now, the police, they're digging deeper. They're struggling to find clear evidence that N was actually tied to Irene's disappearance, or as they suspect at this point, her death. A neighbor said that they'd witnessed N burning something in a 55-gallon drum outside his home the night Irene made her call to her dad.
Did they end up going and looking?
Yes. So they've got this neighbor saying there's a 55-gallon drum. It's not found at the house, though.
They didn't find it. Okay.
No. And those credit card purchases that you were asking about? Well, a security camera caught N making the very first purchase on the card that same day that she went missing. It was a local Walmart that he was in. He bought pants, a shovel, and a pair of boots.
That's really weird.
Yeah. Now, in October, police executed a search warrant on the house N owned. This is months after Irene went missing, right?
Is this when they went to look for the barrel?
So they had put out a call to people like, hey, look for the drum. But this is their like big search of his actual residence, right?
So this is a more in-depth.
Yeah. So this is the same house. Irene had been living there, right? And so much of what they discovered during their search warrant has been kept under wraps. Like, we don't know if they found much or anything, but we do know they were able to locate that shovel that he had bought at Walmart and also the boots from Walmart.
Yeah, I keep having to remind myself that this is like from 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Because normally, like, we would know more because the police wouldn't be trying to keep all of this information to themselves, right?
Yes, there would be.
So there's some of this stuff like this. Like, I don't blame them that they can't tell anybody right now what they found.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we have encountered in the past, like if in old cases where they're like, we cannot tell you that information, but this one is just, it's so current, right?
Yeah.
And what they also discovered is they couldn't find the pants. They couldn't locate the pants that he bought. So,
well, there's probably reasons.
Right. Now, Irene's brother Kennedy told reporters that evidence in everything that happens leads you back to N. I wish he could just tell us what happened or what he knows. Even if he's claiming he's innocent, at least tell us what you know and at least tell us the truth and we can go from there. On March 28th, 2023, just a week before his trial for the financial crimes was set to begin, N decides to take a plea deal. He pleaded guilty to 3 out of the 5 felonies. These were 2 charges for theft and unlawful use of a credit card, which had a maximum of 10 years of a prison sentence and the potential for $10,000 in fines. And the intellectual property charge, which was a maximum of 3 years and $3,000 in fines. All told, it could have totaled up to 23 years in prison and $23,000 in financial penalties. In the end, though, the judge determines that he could serve the theft charges concurrently, and the intellectual property crime would mean probation post-release, like a supervised probation. So he was ordered to pay $13,200 in fines and restitution, and the sentence, instead of 23 years, he was sentenced to a total of 3 to 6 years.
Yikes.
Yeah. This is like such a strong contrast to one of the other cases that we did. Marie, who was Romanian, and there was also financial crimes there. Yeah. It's an interesting, very similar, I feel like, in patterning.
Right.
Yeah. Now, for Irene's family, though, there's been no justice in this case where their loved one is still missing. Irene's father, who spoke to her so frequently, had to wrestle with the fact that she'd kept this relationship completely secret from him. The first time he learned of N was when he was contacted to update him about where Irene had been actually living.
And that was after she went missing.
Yeah, so
that's going to be shocking because they thought they're close, right? They seem like they're a very close family.
Yeah.
And now he's finding out like that she kept this whole relationship from him. So that would be hard.
Right?
He's got a lot like to process.
Yeah. And, you know, her brothers also, they all thought that she was living in Arizona, like learning that's not the case. Like, that's just a lot. And her family, you know, all of this meant they were making countless trips to Gillette. And at one point, on the 1-year anniversary of Irene's disappearance, Kennedy, along with one of their cousins, drove to the capital of Cheyenne in a snowstorm. They wanted to hand deliver a letter as well as a change.org petition to the governor, and it was a plea that was begging for more information about Irene's disappearance from both the Gillette Police and the FBI. Now, the family, like many other families, right, they felt like they were being kept in the dark about any developments in Irene's case. What had been once-a-night phone calls and updates with the police had dwindled to almost nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, back in Gillette, this very small town, Irene's story was actually being kept alive by a group of 4 women. They'd never had a chance to meet Irene, but upon hearing her story, they knew that they had to act. They hung up posters, they organized searches, they held vigils, like they're helping keep her story on the surface.
That's like a really nice point in this story, though, because this is something we don't always get.
No, that there are people who are like, we are.
They're completely invested in helping her for no reason other than to help her.
So yeah, they even go further than that. Like, so on the day that, Irene's family is delivering this petition, one of those women, Stacy Coaster, she delivers a similar one to the Gillette City Council and the Gillette Police Department. So they're all actively making it known, like, we feel like there are some gaps here, right?
Are they communicating with the family too?
Yes, right. So this is like, I love that Irene's family had a support system in Gillette, right? Like they went from never knowing about this town to suddenly there's like a group of women who are there trying to support them and trying
really
to.
Nice.
Yeah. Now, in addition to that, each of the women has logged countless hours and miles on their vehicles. They are driving across like vast swaths of Wyoming. They're looking for clues. They're looking for any sign of Irene. In particular, they set their sights on that oil barrel situation, right? And they said, like, you never realized how many oil barrels are just randomly scattered across the landscape until you're checking each one of them. Now, Kennedy said, I think the community has been tremendous. These are people we don't even know. We haven't met. We just met online. It's amazing to think of the amount of money, time, effort they put in just to help us out. And also in the days since Irene's disappearance, there's a Facebook group called Find Irene that has been a meeting place for people trying to keep her story alive.
Did you go look at it? I'm guessing you did.
I did, yes. So unfortunately, the posts have dwindled over time because just this is so recent, but less and less information is coming out, right? And that's also why I believe it takes so many people to keep these stories going. People are hearing these stories anew, right?
Right.
Now, one of the last posts on this page was news that N was released from prison earlier this year.
He's already out?
So he served just 3 years of his sentence. This news was completely startling to Irene's family. They had not been informed that he went before a parole board in October of 2024. Kennedy said, we had no clue that he was granted parole, and we would have definitely attended to present the victim's statements. It's very disappointing to see how the system is favoring him and the victim is not even informed.
Wouldn't you be so angry?
Yeah, because they didn't get a chance to say anything.
It's just so startling, though, too, that he'd be like, just quietly.
And they just have no idea. And I think this is also where having an awareness of how these systems might work in your own state is necessary, because Wyoming has a particular loophole.
Okay.
Like, it's a failure in its victim notification system. So only victims can register for notification in parole hearings. So in the financial crimes N pleaded guilty to, Irene is considered victim. So her family would not have been able to register for notification on her behalf. Irene would have had to do that herself.
Okay.
So in addition, Wyoming, unlike say Idaho, they keep their parole hearing schedule private from the public. So this is where it's like, oh, how does this work in my state? And is there some sort of advocacy that I could do?
So like on this, Irene's the victim, but like, so say Irene had been killed and there'd been a body. She's obviously clearly the victim still, but do the family members kind of get considered as sort of like a victim too, where they would be held like in the conversation?
Yeah, so I get the impression no. right? Like, this is like a big loophole situation. Yeah, because obviously here, if a murder did happen,
Yeah.
and someone was convicted of that, isn't the family
Kind of like a victim of this crime too?
Exactly, right?
So in Wyoming, would the family of a murder victim not be considered a victim as well?
That's my assumption. I know. Yeah, and to be clear, N has never been charged with anything to do with Irene's disappearance or, as the police have come to believe, her death. So he was solely charged with these financial crimes. He's still listed as a person of interest, which is different from being a suspect, right? Now, it's now been 4 years since she was last seen. Irene is still missing. Again, he's only a person of interest. Of this process, including the parole proceedings, Kennedy said, "We feel like a victim all over again, except this time it's right in our face with the people who are supposed to be protecting us."
We are now going to listen to Amy's poem, Where the Horizon Disappears, about Irene Gakwa, 32, missing since February 24th, 2022, from Gillette, Wyoming. Kim Roberts is an internationally known Canadian actor with over 200 film, television, theater, and voice credits. Most recently seen in All the Lost Ones, Alert, Missing Persons Unit, Working Moms, The Changeling, and The Good Doctor. Kim's most memorable roles include Marnie in Schitt's Creek, Christine in The Handmaid's Tale, Greta in The Sinner, Neva in The Strain, Maz in The Doodlebops, Deborah in Saw 3 and Saw 4, Mrs. Bosco in The Cheetah Girls, and her continuing role as Mayor Goodway in Paw Patrol the Movie, Paw Patrol the Mighty Movie, and A Paw Patrol Christmas. Kim is a pioneer in her industry. Not only has she represented Canada on domestic and international screens for the past 35 years, she is one of the first to have paved the way for artists of color in Canada. Kim was the first Black woman to speak in a nationally televised Canadian commercial. She is one of the co-founders of Obsidian Theatre, Canada's most prominent Black and diverse theatre company, and she has remained a mentor to emerging actors throughout her career. In 2024, Kim was invited to join the Stratford Festival Theatre as a lead performer in the world premiere of Get That Hope. Kim's stellar performance as Margaret White received numerous accolades and is still being lauded by theatre goers to this day. Upcoming roles for Kim include playing Teresa in The Snake, shot on Prince Edward Island and set to debut at the 2026 South by Southwest Film Festival.
Where the Horizon Disappears. You learn that winters in Wyoming can stretch on for centuries, the horizon blurring into one long line of white. Here the air crackles with ice, the skeletal tree branches collecting cold until they glisten like diamonds. You can hate it here, the rigs looming on the plains, their metal bodies like animals, pulling oil from the ground, and the sudden slipping of your car tires across black ice. What could you give for one last sliver of blue? The taste of salt and rice on your tongue as you breathe the word home to the sky.
For more information about our show, please visit shegoesbyjanepodcast.com.
Bye, Vanessa.
Bye, Amy.